Welcome.
Hi, Dr.
I think everybody who is currently on the call is an old hand at this, so I don't need to add anything new about how the rules work. Just I accidentally did this earlier, so if I can ask you guys to do same to mute your computers, that'd be great because we are recording this. It will go up on the website in a few days. Laura's still doing that. So these do become public. And so at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Just wanted to let you know, so today is the 10th public demo that or that we're going to have. So, but they've had a lot more sprints and stuff than just 10. And school's starting up soon. Other stuff, there's some other projects that folks have to get to, and I just wanted to let you know that for the rest of August, the developers are going to be working on something else, but then they're going to come back to Vireo in September. So this is the last demo that we'll have. It'll be another month before we have our next one. So they're going to go through 2 sprint cycles, which equals 4 weeks. So I'll be sending some messages out on the listserv, not only that we're not going to be having a demo in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, but to just kind of watch out for the next time we get going. Was there anything else that I'm forgetting?
I think that was all the business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we just need James whenever he's ready to start the demonstration. Today it also sounds like there's a lot of things that are still in progress, but they're gonna show what work that they've done so far. It's possible that you'll see that they're not going to be asking for approval on anything because it's just not quite done. So.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. So I'll go ahead and get started here.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, we kind of were dealing with some illnesses as well as some travel around the office and didn't quite get everything wrapped up satisfactorily. But everything in the in-testing column, we're at least going to do some demonstration of some of the functionality on that. So the first thing we'll show today is this VIR 288. And this was a bug whereby when you tried to send too much information over the WebSocket, which is the protocol that we're using for client-server communication, the browser would drop that WebSocket connection. And this was manifesting in the context of updating the organizations, because the organizations have grown to be such large entities. The WebSocket was kind of an unsuitable conduit for conveying that information. And so our solution was actually to fall back to a HTTP post request in that context. And what I can do is, to demonstrate that, is do what I often do at the start of one of these demonstrations, and that is kind of build up an organizational hierarchy. So I've kind of gotten started here. I'll just proceed. Make a department under my college. And then we'll put a couple degrees under here. Doctor of Widgets sounds good. And that will be a degree. And we'll say the Master of Science. So I'm going to add that, and you'll notice I'm making a mistake here. It's not a college, but nevertheless I proceed, and I have now got this error in the system. Well, in order to fix that, I can go to this new organization, and I can manage it. Go ahead and change that to the desired field value. And excellent. So we do see that the organization was updated, and that bug is under control. So is that a satisfactory demonstration of that bug being fixed for you, Stephanie?
I think so, yes. I didn't see any bugs, so yeah.
No bugs.
Things appeared to work. Mm-hmm.
All right, and next up, VIR 299, as a manager, I want to delete organizations. So if you end up putting some spurious organizations or some incorrect organizations in that hierarchy, or if your organizational hierarchy changes in the future, you certainly want to go delete those organizations out of the hierarchy. And we don't consider this work quite done because there isn't a confirmation dialog when you go to delete. And it also doesn't propagate back to the front end to give you the immediate feedback, so you kind of need to do a page reload to see your changes. But just to demonstrate the work that has been accomplished, I'll go ahead and make another organization here. And come down to the management tab on that one. Let's say delete it. And reload the page. My server's kind of pokey today. It should be coming back in a second. There we go. And so we see that the delete did go through, but we didn't quite have the user interface niceties that are really needed for a feature like that. So we'll leave that one aside there for now for some future improvement. And then next up, the perennial favorites, the workflow step component inheritance and reinheritance functionality. And for that, what I'm going to show is that we're able to go down to a child organization's workflow step and make some overrides to a field profile, as well as overrides to notes. And then if we go back up the hierarchy to a parent organization and say that those components are non-overridable, we're going to see that the changes, the customizations that the child organizations made are going to be erased by the mandate of the superior organization. So to show that, I can come and manage the workflow, say, of this particular degree right here, and we'll do an override on one of these fields. Change the label on it. And then the college is going to come along and say, well, we don't like people mucking about with that part of the interface. We're going to make that non-overridable. So up higher in the hierarchy, make that change to non-overridable. And now we navigate down the hierarchy, and we see that at this intermediate organization, it is indeed non-overridable. And at the one that had done the override, over there, it's also non-overridable. So
could you do another one? I'm sorry, I got lost. I saw where you put custom, but could you do another one? Sorry.
Right. It was at this, the Doctor of Widgets, I'd done a custom first name. And so what I can do now is I'm going to come over to this organization, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'll do it a little slower, but this time it's going to be not for field profiles, it'll be for the notes, and we'll see the same kind of functionality. So here's a note that we're going to override. So some silly customizations going on here at this subordinate organization. So we have an override of this note, and that is at the Master of Science workflow level. So let's come back up the hierarchy to the college that's above the department, that's above the Master of Science degree. So back at the college now, we're going to go to the corresponding note on the same step. And what we'll say here is, well, we're tired of our subordinate organizations changing this note, so we're going to make it non-overridable. So change to non-overridable, perform the update. And now we can walk back down the hierarchy, So to the department that's in the middle, we see the note has now been rendered non-overridable, and go back all the way down the hierarchy to the Master of Science where we made that override. And down there, we see, once again, it is returned to the default, and it is now non-overridable. So the customization got indeed overridden by the parent. So that is what we have in mind for the re-inheritance of workflow step components that are made non-overridable.
Okay.
So I should say that we have been able to find some bugs with this functionality in just the past couple of days, but we have put some additional cards on the backlog that address the cases in the code where these bugs are being manifest. And some of the work that went into this VIR 240 and 246, the re-inheritance of stuff made non-overridable, went into actually abstracting out the re-inheritance and just in general the inheritance code, because it was functionally and logically equivalent between the field profiles and the nodes. And it was a bit of clever abstraction, but we were able to pull all that code out into a separate module in the code base that's reused in both of these places. And so if we find a bug in one instance, it'll be manifest in the other instance, and we only need to fix it in one place to fix it for both field profiles and for nodes. And what's more is that if we ever want to add new entities to the workflow steps that should exhibit this kind of inheritability, then we'll be able to reuse that very same logic without having to rewrite it.
That is cool. Let's go ahead and, if we can, address Jill's question. She said when you turn the override off and the parent, it returned to the default. Let's see, it returned to default when you overrode, when you did the override upchain. No, it goes to the default. It's the child return goes to the default. The default being whatever the parent has.
If by upchain we mean higher in the hierarchy, so like at the parent, at the college level, we make it non-overridable there. The semantics of that being, I'm not going to let the subordinate organizations make changes on this one. And let's see, no, I turned I turned overridable off. Yeah, so it was overridable, and then I made it not overridable. So.
I just wanted to also just let Jill and Renee know that we're still kind of talking about this whole thing, so don't, we're still talking about the overridability and stuff, and then also, I mean, how, and discussing, well, how would the child, if it is a different person who's working with that level, they're only doing master's degrees or something and not the other degrees for a college, I mean, how are they going to know? So we're in discussion and stuff like this. So it may or may not be, I don't know, the way that it turns out. So, but we'll get all of these questions answered. You can go ahead. I mean, ask all the questions you want and give us your concerns. So.
Yeah, absolutely. This was just the first way that this kind of functionality was conceived, and it's entirely open to our customer as to what the final functionality should look like. So we are, of course, going to be flexible going forward on that. So given that, we do have some bugs associated with these features that we have addressed on separate cards. Is that going to meet your expectations, Stephanie, for this path in the functionality?
Yes, it does what the card says.
All right, and next up we have this VIR 248, and this one was kind of some adjustments in the language. So when you're setting up field profiles on those workflow steps, we wanted the language to be more understandable for system administrators, for administrators of the Vireo system. So the suggested changes were field profile ought to just be field, gloss should be label, and predicate should be something else, probably metadata key. And so we'll come over to the, just pick a workflow here, and I'll go ahead and look at one of those field editing windows in more detail. And we do indeed see that this user displayed gloss is now called the label. We do indeed see the, instead of predicate here, we have metadata key. And it also says update field and not update field profile. So those were some good suggestions for the language that should be a little bit more comprehensible. So does that meet your expectations for the language adjustment on the field modal, Stephanie?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Certainly. And so next, we're going to get into the functionality surrounding the uploading of files of different types attached to the submissions. And there are kind of 4 interrelated cards all surrounding this this set of features. And the language gets a little bit technical because we kind of leveraged a lot of the existing code base to accomplish some of this functionality. And you'll recall from Vireo 3 that there was a notion of document types. And the administrator could come in and edit the document types and create new ones. And these document types were things of the sort of like dissertation, thesis, record of study, performance piece, all these different sorts of things. And what we were able to do was leverage the Vireo 4 functionality of having customizable metadata fields, that is to say those predicates, and have reuse those entities as sort of the labels for the document types. And so what we're going to see here on VIR 310 and 308, VIR 310, we need new predicates that, or metadata keys, if you will, created for each document type, so you can manage the document uploads on submissions. And then this next one, 308, liking to be able to set a document type when you're using a file input type on a field profile. Well, it's going to be a little bit more apparent when I actually bring up the UI for these cards. So I'm going to come over to the application management here. So we'll come down to, let's see, document types. Here we are. And we see all of the default document types that came with Vireo 3. And what we can do is add a new one. And so I like dataset, perhaps. That's going to be a popular thing in the future. So I create this new document type. There we see it. And on the language of the card here, this 308, we see that the expectation is that once we have, or on 310 rather, that the expectation is that when we create that new document type, we're now going to have a new predicate that we can employ on the field profiles. And this 308 is just that when we are making field profiles, if we're going to make them file input types, then we'd like to be able to set those document types. So with the new document type at our disposal, we would like to have a new predicate on the field profile management. So I will come over to the workflow on this particular degree here. We'll go to the file upload step perhaps and add a new field. And here's the familiar interface for adding and modifying fields. But we're going to say, well, this field is not a text field. This one is going to be a file upload, input file. So having made that change, I get some new data that I can enter into this second field here. It now is document type. If I go under document type, I do see, indeed, this new predicate for the new document type that I had created. So, voila. Oop. Need to create a label for the field as well. Okay, so now we have a new field on the file upload step that's going to be for uploading your data set. So that does it for 310 and 308. And Stephanie, if we could answer any of your questions about that, we want to be sure we're meeting expectations for the administrative side of things on that.
Yeah. I'm still a little bit confused, and I guess, you know what, for that one, part of my confusion is coming from the little drop-down part of that already says file upload, right? Yeah, number 4, file upload.
Right.
And maybe that's where I'm getting, I know there's just so many different kind of things to fill out or to choose. So I'm getting there, starting to understand it, but yeah, we might have to kind of have discussions and decide sort of, well, how should this display to the administrator? So,
yeah, perhaps so. It gets interesting when you bring all these new abstractions into what is essentially the Vireo 3 workflow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that fourth step is the file upload step. And the file upload step always had fields where you could upload your manuscript, supplemental files, source files, administrative files. I added a new one for the data set here.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. But within those, then you still have to tell it that this is a file. Your input type is a file.
Absolutely.
And that's where it seems like it's redundant. I know that there's a purpose for it. If there's purpose for it, otherwise you wouldn't have put it in there. So, but in terms of how the usability of it, in terms of the administrator that will be setting this stuff up. So, I think one thing that might totally help is that if we've got a default workflow that's coming over from Vireo 3. Will help kind of illustrate how these things are used. So, but no, it's
sure. And we're offering an extreme degree of flexibility here. We could, on this file upload step, well, we could change the name of it first of all, so it might not be so file centric, but we could intermingle the different types of fields. Some of the fields could be text entry. Some of the fields could be file upload.
So, okay, if you change the workflow step name, it would change what we see in number 4. Is that right? Right next to 4?
That's
instead
right.
of file up. So that's coming, I mean, that actual label right there, right by 4, is coming from that field. I see. Yep, there it is. Okay. All right. All right. So, yeah, I guess that's the part where I didn't realize, well, we may not even need that name. So I'm not sure if okay. We can talk about that other thing, so maybe we don't. It could be whatever.
So
built in by default in the background or something. Okay.
Indeed. However you want to make the request. But for the matter at hand, on Vireo 310, I wanted to create a document type that I would then see in the drop-down and be able to set for Vireo 308.
Okay. I don't know. Micah has a question. Let's see. Can you explain the differences between document type and attachment type? Okay,
so this was distinction that was present in Vireo 3 that we were able to collapse together in Vireo 4. If you look inside the Vireo 3 code base, and this is kind of going under the hood quite a bit, there were on the submission a number of attachments, and those attachments were the files. And one of those attachments was a privileged file that was called the primary file, I believe, and that would have been the manuscript. And then other attachments included things such as action logs, other things of an administrative nature, as well as supplemental files that may have been uploaded by the student. So the document type was, in Vireo 3, sort of like a metadata field that was on the submission itself. And so when you're making a submission, you could set its document type to the things in that list we saw. So this submission is a performance piece. This submission is a dissertation. And in Vireo 4, we're able to make that document type play double duty. So it is going to be used as controlled vocabulary for setting the document type of a submission, but also now it can be used to annotate the files that are uploaded to a submission, including some files that used to be considered attachments. And it's going to be transparent from the student submission side. So I don't know if that provides clarity or not. It's a complicated set of ideas.
Yeah, well, I think we might have to simplify and decide what kind of what things that need to be displayed, or if there's some things that can happen in the background that we don't need to see. But yeah, I gotta still wrap my head around the difference. Yeah, you're taking two different things from Vireo 3 and you're combining them to some extent into Vireo 4. So, can you see Micah's question?
Yeah, that is correct. You would need to have that kind of annotation for every file, supplemental or primary, that you put on submission. Every file needs to have a label. And depending on how you configure it, you could just have one label for files if that's how you wanted to play it. But from a technical standpoint, when you're doing an export of a submission, you need a way of distinguishing the objects from the submission that are files from the other kind of objects in the submission.
Are you kind of talking like a data set is not a file? Or can you give an example of
sure.
an attachment that would not be some sort of file type?
I think all the attachments would be files. The things that would not be files would be things like metadata fields.
Okay. Got lost again, but okay.
Okay, and if indeed at any point you don't deem a card to be satisfactory, Stephanie, then all you have to do is tell us you need to work on it some more, and we can certainly go into some planning after the demo to figure out the direction we need to go.
Okay. Is this one that you're needing a yes or no on, or is this one that you still have work to do and it's not ready yet?
So
that card. Mm-hmm.
Well, we have kind of leveraged some of the features in Vireo 4 to achieve the functionality of Vireo 3, and it's going to be, as we see on the student side, kind of transparent that all this stuff is going on under the hood. Mm-hmm. And as developers, we are, of course, less comfortable asking for customer approval on developer-oriented cards, but...
Right, yeah, that's what I'm wondering whether, I mean, this is just sort of a necessary thing that you guys need to do, but perhaps a different card might be, well, the manager one, I guess. Maybe VIR 308 is the one that I would maybe want to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe so. And perhaps
Okay.
what we'll do is continue down with the demonstration and
Sure.
kind of show some of the features that build on this that may be of more interest, and that could have ramifications for whether or not the underlying work was satisfactory. So
Okay.
I think what we'll do then is move on to VIR 311, and for that one, we want to prevent document type predicates on normal non-file field profiles. So if I come over back to my field profile, let's see, I'll bring up another field, why not? I'll do this title here, for example. And for the metadata key on this one, we have all these different metadata keys that it could be. And the notable thing about it is that none of these metadata keys are the predicates that were in use for the file types. If we were to do some drastic modifications here and maybe change the input type to input file, now it asks me a slightly different question, what's the document type for the file you're uploading? And that's where we see this additional list. And under the hood, these are all predicates that are on a par with things like title, telephone number, etc. But they are in sort of a distinct subdivision of those that are available as the annotation only on the file input fields. So again, a manager side feature, the utility of which I think we're going to see as we continue on. And so I'll go on to this VIR 309 here. And this is that, as a manager, you'd like to be able to control the vocabulary on your file input field profiles to specify the allowable file extensions. And in Vireo 3, when you upload the manuscript, there was a little bit of code on the front end that would check the extension and make sure it was PDF. It would prevent you from making uploads that were not PDF. And in Vireo 4 here, we were able to leverage the controlled vocabulary functionality to make that set of allowable file extensions customizable for the different fields. So what I'll do to demonstrate that is come over to the application settings and the controlled vocabulary management. And I should have a controlled vocabulary sitting on my desktop here. Okay, and so we have some allowed extensions here. Make a new control vocabulary, call it dataset file types. And we will upload our list of allowed file types. And it's a bit of a play example. I don't think we'd want to have JPEG on that list, but it'll suffice for demonstration purposes. Okay, so now we have this new control vocabulary called dataset file types. So now I'm going to come back to my workflow. And indeed, I'm going to go to the file upload step here, where I've made this new field for uploading data sets. And on that one, I can set the control vocabulary to this new control vocabulary that I had created. Okay. So that was the manager being able to set the control vocabularies.
I'm not sure, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
what I'm thinking, because I mean, sort of the way that it works in Vireo 3 is kind of that stuff is hard-coded, for lack of a better term. I don't know, kind of, and I kind of feel that way. We might kind of need to do the same thing in Vireo 4, because all these different file types, for most people, it's just, they don't know, they don't care. So really the only people that are going to get, that care about most of that is at the end of the line, the library. They just need to know what, they need to know their institutional repository has to be able to handle it. So, and it was just kind of wide open in terms of like what supplemental files that there, you didn't have to, you don't restrict it to any particular type. So I guess what I'm saying here is if, maybe somewhere in the background or something, if we want data set, then you guys put all possible data sets or something like that somewhere in the background, because we don't know what those extensions could be or should be or anything like that. So
Stephanie?
maybe it's just part of what our default will look like. And that may not be something, so maybe there's some controlled vocabularies that we might be able to handle in the background versus what we would expect the managers to be able to set up on their own. That's kind of like, is sort of beyond advanced. It's like you're a master at Vireo. So I totally understand how this, it really extends the functionality and what Vireo can do, even beyond thesis and dissertations and stuff. But I think we have to try to keep it a little more similar to Vireo 3 in terms of things where we don't have to make so many selections, if there, unless it was a problem, and I don't think that it has been in Vireo 3.
I guess, Stephanie, I'm going to try and rephrase your request.
Please do.
Is it possible that we can have an option to just have the field agnostic if you don't have a controlled vocabulary associated with that field? It'll just take whatever?
Yeah, that's the current behavior.
The input type
Mm-hmm.
is agnostic?
I think James was addressing that.
Right, so a couple of points. The controlled vocabulary is, of course, optional. So if you want to let any kind of file be uploaded, that's good. And in the second place, I fully agree that this stuff ought to come pre-configured. The functionality in Vireo 3 that we were trying to duplicate was that only PDFs could be uploaded for the PDF field. But we had a feature that was already in place that would allow greater flexibility on that. So certainly it would be very easy to configure the default data to have this, here I'll come over to the manuscript in PDF. This is one of the fields in Vireo 3. And I think just to duplicate the functionality on the student side, what we want is this to be pre-populated with a controlled vocabulary of PDF file type. And then we would fully duplicate the Vireo 3 functionality. And we'd also leave the door open for people who wanted to control file types elsewhere.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Vireo 3 didn't really have explicit support for data sets. You could just upload a supplemental file and make it whatever you want. And Vireo 4 is going to permit that as well.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, and so this is all culminating finally on the student submission side, this VIR 259. As a student, I want to select files during my submission so that they can be uploaded. And when we do that file selection, we're going to see the impact of the organization management side of things on the student submission side. So this student's going to start a submission. Come down to this refresh my page there, I have some stale data. Come down to this customized degree here. All right, and we go to our file upload custom step, and there we have the new file upload, as well as the rest of the file uploads that were original. And this particular one has no restrictions on it, so I can just put this Word file in for my manuscript. And as you mentioned, Stephanie, we probably wanted to have a preloaded default on that with the control vocabulary there. But then down here on the data set, I'll attempt to pull in a random document, and it says that it's not accepting that file type, because that was a docx. But I happen to have this CSV sitting on my desktop, so I'll try to pull that into the data set, and I have success. So this is how it appears on the student side. I think it's a bit more intuitive. And,
yeah. I think it's a little confusing that this is not part of that card. I don't think that once you put it in there, it just kind of goes to the side, but you still have the thing. It looks like it's still, hey, you didn't do anything. So, I mean, so the little gray, yeah, which you got your cursor on now, it might be better if that just kind of disappears, but then you have a link that says need to add more or something, whatever, add or a plus sign to add more if you need it. Does that make sense? It's kind of like that little gray box. I was expecting it to kind of go away after you put something in there.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. This was just a first attempt at it, so definitely we should make some cards for refinements to this interface and how we can better make a user experience on this interface.
Okay.
So. Unless, that is to say, the interface is so inappropriate to not meet your expectations for selecting files.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is going to meet your expectation for a student being able to select files?
Yes. Does that have any does it have any sort of implication? Is this something that people can do on a PC versus Mac? Is this drag and drop thing, is it any kind of restrictions on that?
Yeah, it should be pretty cross-browser compatible.
Okay.
But I think also you can click and then you get the typical dialogue.
Oh, how'd you do that? Like a right click or something? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So you can click and do the browse or just the drag and drop thing. Okay. We may just need some different text or something. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, the drag and drop is just kind of a nicety. Okay. Well, if that is going to meet your expectations on the student submission side, I'll put that card over.
Okay.
And I think we can look to a resolution of all the rest of the work in a later discussion. So, and then the last card was for the sorting and paginating with the dynamic metadata fields on the admin list view. And we don't think this is totally done yet, but I can bring us over and take a glimpse at it just to see what's in the works. And we do see in these columns over here all the columns that the system is currently configured to support. So, for example, I also have this data set column available. there are some problems with the sorting algorithm at the moment, so we don't want to submit this for approval yet, but the work is ongoing for getting robust functionality that's going to support a variable, configurable set of metadata and other fields on the documents. So I think that wraps it up for the demonstration side of things today.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure whether we've answered all the questions. I'm going to go back to Renee would the primary file still have to be PDF? And I think we're going to, yes, the default is going to be that way, but it's built so you can change that or add other options. And then hopefully that answered that question. And then Jill, will browsing to a file to upload go away? Will a student always have to drag and drop? Oh, I think that was answered then. So yeah, we talked about that little, that gray box and stuff to go away possibly, and then also there is, they can do the browse, and we need to make that a little more clear. So, okay, I think we got it. Man, well, for people being sick or out or something, you guys sure did get a lot accomplished. So this is the longest demo that we've had so far. So yeah, you did a whole lot of work. Looks great. And so we're good for now, and we'll pick this up in September. Is that right?
That's the plan.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have two weeks off. Stephanie and I will maintain contact with the team in the interim, and we'll figure out what the dates are for our return. Thanks so much, everybody. Stephanie, got anything else before we call it a day?
No.
All right.
I'm good. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, James, for the demo.
Yeah, way to go, Ags. Looks great.
Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, all the developers, you guys are rocking. Very good.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.